They say time heals everything. But for Olivia, time only deepened the wounds of a past she could never escape. 23 years ago, a cruise meant to be a fresh start became the beginning of her worst nightmare. Her little daughter, Emily, vanished without a trace, swallowed by the mysteries of the ocean. No clues, no answers, only the silence of the waves mocking her grief. Now, decades later, Olivia walks along the shore, haunted by the past, when something impossible happens. A wedding, a familiar face, and a truth so devastating that it will shake everything she believed in. Stay until the end because nothing is as it seems. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? The rain pounded against the windows like impatient fingertips, tapping at the glass, demanding to be heard. Inside the dimly lit house, Olivia stood frozen in the middle of the living room, her fingers clenched into fists, her chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. Across from her, Michael, her husband of 8 years, stared back, his face twisted with frustration, his hands running through his hair in exasperation. "You always do this," he snapped, his voice sharp, cutting through the tension that hung between them like a storm about to break. "You make decisions without thinking, without considering anyone but yourself." Olivia shook her head, disbelief spreading across her face as she let out a breathless laugh, void of any humor. "Are you serious, Michael? You're accusing me of not thinking? I've spent years thinking, years holding this family together while you—" Her voice caught, but she refused to let herself break. "While you checked out, while you planned your escape behind my back." Michael's eyes flickered, a moment of hesitation, and that was all the confirmation Olivia needed. "You weren't supposed to find that," he muttered under his breath, barely audible, but to Olivia, it might as well have been a scream. "So it's true," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You were planning to leave us, to leave me and Emily." Michael exhaled sharply, rubbing his hands over his face. "Olivia, it's not like that. I just—" He stopped, shaking his head, as if there was nothing more to say, as if words could fix the wreckage he had caused. "I can't do this anymore," Olivia finally said, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. She turned away from him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had spent years trying to hold on to something that had already fallen apart. Years trying to be enough for a man who had long since stopped loving her. From the staircase, a small voice broke through the silence. "Mommy!" Olivia turned instantly, her heart lurching. Emily stood there, her big green eyes wide with confusion, her tiny hands clutching the railing. "It's okay, sweetheart," Olivia said quickly, forcing a smile she didn't feel. "Come here, baby." Emily hesitated before stepping down the stairs, her little feet patting softly against the wood. Olivia bent down, gathering her daughter into her arms, breathing in the familiar scent of her baby shampoo. "Mommy's just talking to Daddy," she murmured into her daughter's hair. "Everything is okay." But it wasn't okay. It hadn't been okay for a long time. Michael stood in the doorway, watching them with an unreadable expression. "Where are you going?" he asked, his voice calmer now, but Olivia had learned not to trust that tone. It was the voice he used when he wanted to manipulate, when he wanted control. "We're going away for a few days," Olivia said, standing up, still holding Emily close. "I need space. I need to think." "A few days where?" Michael pressed. Olivia met his gaze, her chin lifting defiantly. "A cruise. Just me and Emily." Michael's eyes darkened, and for a moment he looked afraid. "You can't do that," he said quickly, stepping forward. "It's not safe. You don't know what—" He cut himself off, swallowing hard. Olivia frowned, a strange chill creeping down her spine. "What, Michael?" she demanded. "What don't I know?" "Nothing," he said too quickly. Olivia, don't take her on that cruise. Please." It was the closest thing to desperation she had ever heard in his voice. But it was too late. The decision had been made. The next morning, Olivia and Emily boarded the Ocean Star, a luxury cruise ship that promised relaxation, a fresh start, an escape from the weight of reality. Olivia tried to focus on that as they walked through the grand entrance, past smiling staff members and glistening chandeliers. Emily's excitement was contagious. She clung to her mother's hand, her tiny face glowing with anticipation. "Look, Mommy, it's so big." Olivia smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "I know, baby, we're going to have so much fun." But even as she said the words, a strange unease settled in her chest. As they reached their cabin, Olivia's phone buzzed. She pulled it from her bag, frowning at the unknown number flashing across the screen. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" There was silence on the other end, just static, like a distant radio signal. Then a whisper barely there. "You shouldn't have come." The call disconnected. Olivia's breath hitched, her skin prickling with unease. She glanced at Emily, who was already exploring their suite, oblivious to the sudden tension in the air. She shook her head, forcing herself to push the feeling away. It was just a prank call, a wrong number, nothing more. That night, Olivia took Emily to the grand dining hall. The air filled with laughter, music, the clinking of glasses. Everything felt perfect, normal, until she saw him. A man in a black suit stood near the entrance, watching her. His face was unfamiliar, but something about him sent a shiver down her spine. His gaze was intense, unwavering, and when Olivia turned to look at him again, he was gone. Later, as Olivia tucked Emily into bed, her daughter looked up at her with sleepy eyes. "Mommy," she murmured, "I saw a lady today." Olivia brushed Emily's hair back, smiling softly. "What lady, sweetheart?" "She was pretty," Emily said, her voice heavy with sleep. "She said she knew me." Olivia's breath caught. "What do you mean, baby?" Emily's lashes fluttered. "She said she's been waiting for me." A chill ran down Olivia's spine. "Where did you see her?" she asked carefully. Emily yawned, her little fingers curling around the blanket. "She was on the boat. She waved at me." Olivia tried to ignore the creeping sense of dread that settled in her stomach. It was just a child's imagination, nothing more. She kissed Emily's forehead, whispering a soft goodnight. But long after her daughter had drifted off to sleep, Olivia lay awake, staring at the ceiling, her mind racing with questions. And somewhere outside, beyond the vast, endless sea, something was waiting. The waves outside rocked the massive cruise ship gently, a rhythmic lull that should have been soothing. But inside Olivia's cabin, sleep refused to come. She lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, her mind replaying Emily's words over and over again. She said she knew me. She said she's been waiting for me. Olivia told herself it was nothing, a child's imagination. Maybe Emily had seen a friendly passenger, someone who reminded her of a storybook character. But deep in her chest, a quiet, gnawing fear took root. Something didn't feel right. At some point, exhaustion won, and Olivia drifted into a restless sleep. But it wasn't peaceful. In her dreams, she was standing on the deck of the ship, surrounded by mist. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction, black and bottomless. Somewhere in the distance, she heard Emily laughing, but when she turned to find her, the laughter grew faint, distant. Then she saw the woman, pale with long dark hair, standing just beyond the railing, her face blurred, almost like a reflection in water. Olivia tried to move closer, to see her more clearly, but something held her back. The woman raised a hand, fingers delicately curling in a wave, and then she whispered something, so soft it barely touched the air. But Olivia understood it. "It's time." Olivia woke with a start, her heart pounding. The room was silent except for the hum of the ship. Emily was still curled up beside her, breathing softly. Olivia reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. She was here. She was safe. It had just been a dream. But as Olivia shifted to sit up, something on the nightstand caught her eye. A single, small object that hadn't been there before. Emily's stuffed rabbit, the one she always slept with, was missing from the bed. And now it sat on the nightstand, perfectly positioned, facing Olivia. She sucked in a breath, Had Emily moved it in her sleep? Maybe. But the way it sat there, almost deliberate, sent a shiver through her. The next morning, Olivia tried to shake the unease as she and Emily stepped out into the sunlit corridors of the Ocean Star. The ship was alive with energy. Guests in brightly colored vacation outfits laughed and sipped coffee in the lounges. Children ran ahead of their parents, their sneakers squeaking against the polished floors. Everything looked so normal, so safe. Emily tugged at Olivia's hand, her excitement bubbling over. "Mommy, can we go to the pool?" "Of course, baby," Olivia said, forcing a smile. The pool deck was massive, surrounded by lounge chairs and a sparkling view of the endless ocean. Emily squealed as she kicked off her sandals and ran toward the edge of the shallow pool, giggling as she dipped her feet into the water. Olivia sat on a chair nearby, watching her, trying to let the warmth of the sun melt away the tension in her shoulders. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw him again, the man in the black suit. He was standing near the railing of the deck, his posture rigid, his eyes locked on her, not just glancing in her direction, staring. Olivia's pulse quickened. Who was he? Was he following her? She looked away, trying to keep her breathing steady. When she looked back a few seconds later, he was gone. She exhaled sharply. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe she was still on edge from last night. A loud splash snapped her back to reality. Olivia's heart lurched as she saw Emily in the water, struggling. Emily! She was already moving, running toward the pool, her breath catching in her throat. But just as suddenly as it had happened, Emily surfaced, coughing, blinking up at her mother in confusion. "Mommy?" she said, water dripping from her curls. "What's wrong?" Olivia knelt by the pool's edge, gripping Emily's arms. "Are you okay? What happened?" Emily tilted her head. "Nothing, Mommy. I just went under for a second." Olivia stared at her, searching her daughter's face. Something wasn't right. Emily wasn't acting like a child who had just been scared. She was too calm. Olivia swallowed hard. "Who pushed you?" Emily's little brows furrowed. "No one." "Emily." Olivia's voice was soft but urgent. "Did someone touch you?" Emily shook her head, droplets of water flying from her hair. "No, Mommy." "But..." She hesitated. "But what?" Emily glanced down, suddenly shy. She was there. Olivia's stomach twisted. "Who, baby?" Emily's fingers played with the hem of her swimsuit. "The lady from the boat." A chill slid down Olivia's spine. "The one who waved at you?" Emily nodded. "She was in the water with me. But she's gone now." The world seemed to tilt. Olivia felt her breath shorten, her mind scrambling for logic. Maybe Emily had seen another passenger in the water. Maybe. But deep down, she knew. Something was very, very wrong. That night, Olivia barely slept. Every sound in the cabin made her sit up. Every creak of the ship made her pulse race. Around 2 in the morning, she gave up trying and slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Emily. She needed air. She needed to clear her head. The deck was eerily quiet at this hour, the ocean stretching out like a black abyss. Olivia leaned against the railing, inhaling the salty night air. She closed her eyes, trying to push away the thoughts clawing at her mind. Then she felt it. Presence. The hairs on her arms stood on end. She turned, her breath catching in her throat. A woman stood a few feet away, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her white dress almost glowing in the dim deck lights. Her face was obscured in shadow, but Olivia could feel her eyes watching, piercing, knowing. For a long moment, neither of them moved. The wind howled softly, the ship creaked beneath them. Then the woman smiled. Not a warm, friendly smile, a knowing smile, a secret smile. And then, just as quickly as she had appeared, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the ship. Olivia's pulse pounded in her ears. She wanted to run after her, to demand answers, but her feet wouldn't move. Somewhere in the distance, the sound of the ocean crashing against the ship's hull echoed in the silence. And for the first time, Olivia realized they were not alone on this ship. Olivia's hands trembled as she gripped the cold railing, her breath coming in short, uneven gasps. The woman was gone, disappeared into the ship's vast corridors like a shadow dissolving into the night. Olivia forced herself to move, her legs weak as she turned back toward her cabin. Every step echoed through the empty hallway, the dim overhead lights flickering slightly, casting elongated shadows on the walls. By the time she reached the door, her hands were clammy. She turned the handle slowly, pushing it open without making a sound. Inside, the room was silent except for Emily's soft, rhythmic breathing. Olivia let out a slow breath, forcing herself to believe, just for a moment, that maybe she was imagining things. Maybe the stress of the divorce, the tension of leaving Michael, the exhaustion of the past few years had finally caught up to her. Maybe she was unraveling. She lay down beside Emily, wrapping her arms around her little body, inhaling the scent of lavender shampoo. Safe. Emily was safe. That was all that mattered. But even as Olivia tried to force herself into sleep, one thought clawed at the back of her mind. That woman smiled at me. She wasn't a hallucination. She wasn't a trick of the light. She had been real, and she knew Olivia had seen her. Morning came too quickly. Olivia was pulled from her restless sleep by the sound of movement. For a brief moment, she panicked. Emily wasn't next to her. But then she turned her head and saw her daughter standing by the window, her small hands pressed against the glass, staring out at the endless ocean. "Baby!" Olivia sat up, her voice groggy. Emily didn't turn. "Mommy, do you hear it?" A cold sensation ran through Olivia's spine. "Hear what?" Emily cocked her head slightly. "The voices. They're singing." Olivia pushed back the blankets, moving toward her daughter. "Emily, who's singing?" Emily finally turned to face her mother. "The lady. She said they always sing before they take someone." Olivia felt her stomach drop. She knelt in front of Emily, gripping her small shoulders. "Sweetheart, listen to me. Who told you that?" Emily blinked, her expression unreadable. "She did." Olivia's pulse pounded against her ribs. "Baby, when did you talk to her?" Emily looked down at her fingers as if thinking. "Last night. She came to my bed, but she told me not to wake you up." Olivia's throat went dry. "Emily, what did she say to you?" Emily glanced back at the window. "She said the ship remembers, and that it's been waiting." The room felt like it was closing in. Olivia had always been a woman who prided herself on logic, on reason. But there was no logical explanation for what was happening. She stood up quickly, her mind racing. This cruise had been a mistake. She had to get off this ship. Grabbing her phone, she dialed the front desk. The line rang once, then twice, before a woman's calm voice answered. "Guest services. How can I assist you?" "Yes, hi," Olivia said, struggling to steady her voice. "I need to know if it's possible to disembark early. I have a family emergency." The woman was silent for a moment. "I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're currently at sea. The next docking point is in 3 days. 3 days. Olivia swallowed hard. "Is there any way to contact the mainland?" "I need to. I'm afraid our satellite phone is currently down due to interference," the woman interrupted. "But I assure you, everything is perfectly safe." Olivia exhaled shakily. She wanted to argue, to demand they turn the ship around, but she knew it would be useless. She was stuck here, and so was Emily. After breakfast, Olivia took Emily to the onboard children's center, hoping to distract her from whatever strange thoughts had taken root in her mind. The large, colorful playroom was filled with toys, books, and soft mats for the kids. Other children ran around laughing, playing, their parents chatting nearby. "Mommy, do I have to stay?" Emily asked, her small fingers curling around Olivia's wrist. "Just for a little while, sweetheart," Olivia said softly, brushing a stray curl from her daughter's forehead. "I need to speak with someone. I'll be right back. Okay?" Emily hesitated, but then nodded. Olivia kissed her forehead before turning away, her mind already spinning with questions. She needed answers. She made her way to the information desk near the main lobby. An older man in a crisp white uniform greeted her with a polite smile. "How can I assist you today, ma'am?" Olivia hesitated. "I was wondering if you could tell me something about the history of this ship." The man raised an eyebrow, surprised by the question. "The Ocean Star has been in operation for nearly 50 years, ma'am. She's one of the finest luxury liners in our fleet." 50 years. Something about that number sent a chill through her. "Have there ever been accidents?" Olivia asked carefully. The man's expression didn't change, but Olivia noticed a slight shift in his posture. "Accidents?" he repeated. "People going missing," she clarified, lowering her voice. The man hesitated. "I'm afraid I wouldn't have that information, ma'am." Liar, Olivia thought. He knew something. Before she could press further, a voice spoke from behind her. "You won't find what you're looking for here." Olivia turned sharply. An older woman stood a few feet away, her silver hair pulled into a loose braid over her shoulder. Her face was lined with age, but her deep-set eyes were piercing, sharp with something Olivia couldn't quite place. "Excuse me?" Olivia asked cautiously. The woman studied her. "If you want the truth, meet me at the rear deck at sunset." And with that, she turned and walked away. Olivia stood frozen, her heart pounding. Every instinct in her body told her to ignore it, to walk away, take Emily, and pretend none of this was happening. But she couldn't, because deep down she knew whatever was happening on this ship, it wasn't finished yet. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Olivia made her way to the rear deck. The woman was already there, leaning against the railing, staring out at the endless sea. "You came," she murmured without turning. Olivia swallowed hard. "Who are you?" The woman finally turned, her expression unreadable. "Someone who has been running from this place for a long time." A gust of wind swept between them, rustling Olivia's hair. "You said I wouldn't find what I was looking for at the front desk." "What did you mean?" The woman exhaled slowly. "Because they don't want you to know. This ship," she paused, choosing her words carefully, "it has a memory. It doesn't forget the ones it's taken." A deep, suffocating silence settled between them. Olivia's fingers curled into the railing. "Taken?" she whispered. The woman's eyes darkened. "Have you checked the ship's old passenger lists?" Olivia shook her head. "Why would I?" The woman's voice was almost too soft to hear. "Because you might find your daughter's name on one from years ago." Olivia's breath caught. "That's impossible." The woman's gaze didn't waver. "Is it?" The ship groaned beneath them, the waves crashing like distant whispers against the hull. And in that moment, Olivia knew the nightmare was only beginning. The words hung in the salty air, stretching between Olivia and the woman like an invisible force pulling them closer. "You might find your daughter's name on one from years ago." Olivia's mind rejected it immediately. It wasn't possible. It was ridiculous. Emily had never been on this ship before. They had never taken this cruise. And yet, the way the woman stared at her, the solemn certainty in her voice, sent a slow, creeping chill through Olivia's bones. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her voice. "You're mistaken," she said, though the words felt hollow as they left her lips. "That's impossible. My daughter is 6 years old. She's never—" The woman tilted her head slightly, her sharp, knowing eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "Are you sure?" The question hit Olivia in a way she hadn't expected. A simple question. "Are you sure?" Of course she was sure. Wasn't she? A cold gust of wind swept across the deck, making Olivia shiver. The sky had darkened, the last slivers of daylight sinking into the horizon. She glanced around, suddenly hyper-aware of how alone they were. The usual background hum of the ship, the distant music from the ballroom, the laughter from the lounges, felt muted, like a thick fog had settled over everything. The woman sighed and turned back to the ocean, her fingers tapping idly against the railing. "I was like you once," she murmured. "A mother, a wife. I came on this ship looking for answers, just like you." Olivia frowned. "Answers to what?" The woman hesitated, as if weighing how much to say. Finally, she exhaled. My son disappeared here 30 years ago. A sharp pang shot through Olivia's chest. What? The woman's fingers curled against the railing. He was 8, just a boy. One moment he was there, laughing, playing in the pool. The next, gone. Olivia felt her stomach twist. And no one helped you? The woman let out a bitter laugh. Oh, they helped. The crew. Security. They searched. But they never found him. And then, when I tried to dig deeper, when I started asking questions, people started looking at me like I was crazy. They told me maybe he had fallen overboard. Maybe he had wandered off. But I knew that wasn't what happened. Olivia's skin prickled. So what did happen? The woman turned her head, her expression unreadable. This ship doesn't just sail the ocean. It moves through time, through memory, and sometimes it takes things with it. A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. That doesn't make any sense. The woman gave her a sad, knowing smile. No, it doesn't. Until it does. Olivia shook her head, trying to push away the growing panic clawing at her throat. You think my daughter, what? That she was here before? The woman's gaze never wavered. I think the ship knows her, and I think it's trying to take her back. A hollow silence settled between them. Something deep inside Olivia, the part of her that had been screaming since the moment she stepped on this ship, was telling her that this woman wasn't lying, that she wasn't crazy, that this wasn't just a story. She felt the air shift, like an invisible force passing between them. Then, behind them, a voice. Mommy! Olivia's heart lurched. She turned sharply. Emily stood a few feet away, her small figure silhouetted against the dim deck lights. She wasn't supposed to be here. Olivia had left her in the playroom, safe. But now she stood there, her little hands at her sides, her wide green eyes staring. Emily, baby, what are you doing here? Olivia hurried toward her, kneeling down, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Did someone bring you here? Emily shook her head. I woke up and you weren't there. Olivia pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to scare you. Emily's small fingers curled into Olivia's sleeve. Mommy, she whispered. The lady said you wouldn't believe her. A bolt of ice shot through Olivia's veins. She pulled back slightly, staring into her daughter's innocent face. What lady? Emily's lips parted as if to speak, but then something changed. The wind shifted. A deep, groaning sound reverberated through the ship, so low it was almost imperceptible. Olivia barely had time to process it before Emily suddenly stiffened, her body going rigid in Olivia's arms. Olivia's breath hitched. Emily? Emily's eyes locked onto something behind Olivia. Unblinking, unmoving. Olivia turned. The woman was gone. The deck was empty. A strange sensation washed over Olivia, like something had just been erased. She turned back to Emily, her hands cupping her daughter's face. Baby, are you okay? Emily blinked. A flicker of confusion crossed her little face, as if she wasn't sure where she was. Mommy, she murmured, her voice distant. I think I forgot something. A cold dread settled in Olivia's stomach. She scooped Emily up in her arms and carried her back inside, her heart hammering against her ribs. By the time they reached their cabin, Olivia had made up her mind. She was going to the archives. She had to see those passenger lists for herself. She needed to know the truth. Emily curled up in bed, drifting into sleep almost instantly, but Olivia sat awake for a long time, staring at her daughter's peaceful face, feeling the weight of something heavy pressing against her chest. The ship had a memory, and she was about to find out what it remembered. The hum of the ship's engines vibrated through the floor beneath Olivia's feet as she made her way down the dimly lit hallway, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst from her chest. Every instinct in her body screamed for her to turn around, to climb back into bed with Emily and pretend none of this was happening. But she couldn't. Not anymore. There were too many coincidences, too many questions. The woman's words echoed in her mind, pulling her forward. The ship remembers. What did that mean? How could a ship remember someone? The thought was absurd, But Olivia had stopped searching for rational explanations. She needed answers. The entrance to the ship's archives was tucked away on one of the lower decks, far from the bustling lounges and entertainment areas. The hallway was eerily empty, the overhead lights flickering slightly as she approached the large wooden doors marked records and history. A brass plaque beside the door read, "Access restricted to authorized personnel." Olivia hesitated for only a second before gripping the handle and pushing it open. The room was colder than she expected, the air thick with the scent of old paper and polished wood. Rows upon rows of filing cabinets lined the walls, along with shelves filled with thick, leather-bound logs. A few glass cases displayed artifacts from the ship's long history, photographs, handwritten captain's logs, faded boarding passes. Her pulse quickened as she stepped inside, scanning the space. There was no one here. She moved quickly, her fingers trailing over the spines of the books, looking for anything that resembled a passenger list. Some of the books were labeled by decade, others by route. She grabbed one of the older logs, her hands trembling as she flipped through the yellowed pages. Names, dates, cabins. She kept scanning, her breath growing unsteady. Then she saw it. A log dated 23 years ago. Her fingers hovered over the page before she forced herself to look. The list was long, filled with names that meant nothing to her. She skimmed the columns, searching, and then she saw it. Her breath caught in her throat. Emily Carter. Cabin 427. The world tilted. Her fingers dug into the pages, her vision blurring. No, this isn't possible. Emily was 6 years old. She hadn't even been born 23 years ago. This was a mistake. It had to be. Her hands trembled as she turned the page, searching for more, anything that could explain it. And then she found something worse. Beside Emily's name in the final column was a single word. Missing. Olivia's legs gave out. She collapsed into the nearest chair, her breath coming in shallow gasps. Her mind raced, spinning through every logical explanation. But there wasn't one. Her Emily, her 6-year-old daughter, could not have been on this ship 23 years ago. Unless a cold, sick feeling twisted in her stomach. Unless the woman had been right. Unless this ship remembered. She slammed the book shut, her hands shaking. She had to get back to Emily. Now, she shoved the book back onto the shelf and hurried toward the door. But as she reached for the handle, she heard it. A whisper. Soft, barely audible but unmistakable. "Mommy!" Her blood turned to ice. She turned slowly, her heart slamming against her ribs. The room was empty. The air was deathly still. But she had heard it. Another whisper, closer this time. "Why did you leave me?" Olivia's breath caught. A cold gust of air swept through the room, rattling the shelves, flipping pages in the open books. The lights flickered, casting eerie, shifting shadows across the walls. She stumbled back, her hands scrambling for the doorknob. She had to get out. Now, she yanked the door open and ran. The hallways stretched before her like a maze, the familiar corridors suddenly feeling endless. The sound of her own footsteps echoed, sharp and uneven. She didn't stop. She couldn't stop. She needed to get to Emily. By the time she reached their cabin, she was breathless, her fingers fumbling with the keycard. She shoved the door open. The room was dark, too dark. "Emily?" Her voice was hoarse, desperate. Silence. She flipped on the light. The bed was empty. Panic crushed her lungs. She rushed to the bathroom. Empty. The closet. Empty. "Emily!" Then, from behind her, a soft giggle. Olivia turned sharply, her heart slamming into her throat. Emily stood in the corner of the room, her small hands clasped in front of her, her head tilted slightly. But something was wrong. Her eyes, they were distant, unfocused, like she was looking through Olivia, rather than at her. "Baby," Olivia whispered, stepping forward. "What are you doing?" Emily didn't move. Then, in the softest voice, she said, "I remember now." Olivia froze. Her blood turned to ice. Emily blinked slowly, her lips curling into the smallest of smiles. "She told me everything. A thick, suffocating silence stretched between them. Olivia's hands trembled as she knelt in front of her daughter. "Who, baby? Who told you?" Emily reached out, her tiny fingers brushing against Olivia's cheek. "The lady from the boat." Olivia swallowed, forcing herself to stay calm. "What did she say, sweetheart?" Emily's smile didn't falter. "She said I don't belong here." A slow, sinking dread coiled in Olivia's stomach. "Emily, look at me," she pleaded. "You do belong here. You belong with me." Emily's expression didn't change. "But I already left once." Tears burned in Olivia's eyes. "No, baby. You've always been with me. You are with me." Emily tilted her head slightly, studying her mother like she was trying to solve a puzzle. "Then why do I remember the water?" A sharp, icy shiver ran down Olivia's spine. "The water?" she repeated, barely able to get the words out. Emily nodded. "It was cold. I didn't like it." A single tear slipped down Olivia's cheek. "Emily, baby, what are you talking about?" Emily blinked slowly, then looked toward the window, where the vast ocean stretched into the darkness. "I think I drowned." The room tilted. The world stopped. Olivia felt the breath leave her body, her hands shaking violently. "No," she whispered, shaking her head, her vision blurring with tears. "That's not true. That's not true." Emily turned back to her, her expression eerily calm. "But it is." Olivia reached out, pulling Emily into her arms, holding her so tightly she could feel her daughter's heartbeat against her own. "No," she choked out, her fingers tangling in Emily's hair. "You're here. You're real." Emily nestled into her mother's embrace, her small arms wrapping around Olivia's neck. Then, in the smallest whisper, she said, "For now." Olivia's breath caught. Somewhere outside, the ocean groaned, and deep within the ship, something shifted. Something remembered. The past wasn't finished with them yet. Olivia held Emily so tightly she could feel every breath, every tiny movement of her daughter's body against hers. Her mind refused to process what had just happened, what Emily had just said. "I think I drowned." No, that was impossible. Emily was here. She was warm, solid, breathing. Olivia could feel her little heartbeat against her own chest, fast but steady. But the way Emily had spoken, the eerie calm in her voice, it sent a terror through Olivia so deep she thought she might collapse under its weight. She forced herself to pull back just enough to look into Emily's face. "Baby, listen to me," she whispered, cupping her daughter's soft cheeks. "You didn't drown. You're here with me. You've always been with me." Emily blinked slowly, her small fingers playing with the hem of Olivia's sleeve. "But then why do I remember the water?" Olivia swallowed hard. Her mind spun in every direction, searching for an explanation, something logical, something normal. She needed to fix this. She needed to pull Emily away from whatever this was before it consumed them both. She took a deep breath, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Maybe it was just a bad dream, sweetheart. Sometimes dreams feel real, especially on the ocean. The waves, the movement of the ship, it can make things feel different." Emily tilted her head slightly, as if considering it. "Maybe," she murmured, but she didn't sound convinced. Olivia ran her fingers through Emily's curls, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "Come on, baby. Let's get some rest. Okay?" Emily hesitated, then nodded, allowing Olivia to guide her back to bed. Olivia pulled the blankets up around her daughter, tucking her in as tightly as she could. "I love you so much, sweetheart," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from Emily's face. Emily's green eyes met hers, still clouded with something Olivia couldn't quite name. "I love you too, Mommy." Olivia forced a smile, stroking her daughter's cheek. "Close your eyes, baby. I'll be right here." Emily let her lids droop, her breathing evening out within minutes. Olivia sat beside her, watching, waiting. She couldn't sleep. Not now. Not after everything. Instead, she reached for her phone, her fingers trembling as she navigated through the ship's onboard information. She needed to find that woman again. the one who had told her about the ship, about its memory. But when she searched the passenger directory, the name the woman had given her, Margaret Lawson, wasn't there. A cold chill crept through her. Margaret had been there. Olivia had spoken to her, looked into her eyes, touched her arm. She was real. She had to be real. Unless a wave of nausea washed over Olivia. She pushed the thought away, forcing herself to focus. If she couldn't find Margaret, she had to do something else. She needed to get off this ship. She needed to take Emily and leave before. Before what? What was she afraid of? She didn't even know anymore. The next morning, Olivia was out of bed before the sun rose. She dressed quickly, watching over Emily as she slept, peaceful and unaware. She needed answers, and she needed them now. She left their cabin quietly, making her way through the long, twisting corridors of the Ocean Star, her pulse quickening with every step. She went straight to the ship's main office, where a receptionist greeted her with a polite but detached smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I assist you?" Olivia gripped the counter, leaning in slightly. "I need to speak with the captain." The receptionist's smile faltered. "The captain is unavailable at the moment, ma'am. Is there something I can help you with?" Olivia's fingers tightened against the wood. "No, I need to speak with him directly. It's about my daughter." The woman's expression remained neutral, but something flickered behind her eyes. "I see. If you have a concern about a passenger, security can—" "I don't need security," Olivia cut in, her voice sharper than she intended. "I need answers." The woman hesitated, then sighed. "Please wait here, ma'am." She disappeared into the back office, leaving Olivia standing alone, her heart hammering in her chest. Minutes passed. Then the door opened again, but it wasn't the receptionist who returned. It was the man in the black suit, the one who had been watching her since the beginning. Olivia's breath caught. He stepped toward her with the same unreadable expression he always wore. Up close, she noticed how unsettlingly still he was, like he wasn't just standing there but waiting. "Ms. Carter," he said smoothly, "I hear you've been asking questions." Olivia swallowed, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Who are you?" The man smiled slightly. "I work for the ship." She didn't like the way he said it. "Not on the ship. For it." "What do you want?" she demanded. The man tilted his head. "That's the question, isn't it? What do you want?" "I want the truth," she said, her voice steady. The man's smile widened. "Are you sure?" A deep, unsettled feeling twisted in Olivia's stomach. "Because once you know," he continued, "you can't unknow." A long silence stretched between them. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. He held it out to her. Olivia hesitated, then took it with shaky fingers. She unfolded it slowly, her breath catching as she read the words scrawled in faded ink. Passenger record. Emily Carter. Age 6. Cabin 427. Status: missing. Beneath it, another name. Olivia Carter. Age 32. Cabin 427. Status: unresolved. The paper slipped from her hands. Her stomach clenched so hard she thought she might be sick. She shook her head violently. "No," she whispered. "This is wrong. This is a mistake." The man simply watched her, his expression unchanged. "Do you remember boarding this ship?" he asked. Olivia's breath hitched. "What? Do you remember the dock? The check-in? Do you remember how you got here?" The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. She searched her mind, desperate, frantic. She remembered the fight with Michael. She remembered booking the cruise. She remembered, her head pounded. She remembered being here, but she didn't remember getting here. Her breath came in short, shallow gasps. "What is this?" she choked out. "What's happening?" The man tucked his hands into his pockets. "I told you, the ship remembers." A thick, suffocating silence stretched between them. Then Olivia did the only thing she could think of. She ran. She ran back through the hallways, back to her cabin, back to Emily. She slammed the door shut behind her, locking it, her breath ragged. Emily was sitting on the bed, her small hands folded in her lap. She looked up as Olivia stumbled toward her. "Mommy?" she asked softly. "Why are you crying?" Olivia's vision blurred. She fell to her knees in front of her daughter, cupping Emily's face in her hands. "I won't let them take you," she whispered fiercely. Emily blinked. "But, Mommy," she said in that eerily calm voice. "They already did." The floor beneath Olivia seemed to disappear. She held onto Emily, her mind spiraling, the weight of the truth crashing over her like a tidal wave. Something was wrong. Something had always been wrong. And now there was no way out. Olivia felt the weight of her daughter's words settle over her like an anchor dragging her down into the depths of the ocean. They already did. It was a whisper, soft and innocent, but it shattered something inside her. She clutched Emily tighter, pressing her forehead against her daughter's as if she could somehow tether her to this reality, keep her from slipping through her fingers. "Baby," Olivia choked out, her voice barely audible. "What do you mean? Who took you?" Emily's small fingers traced the hem of Olivia's sleeve absently, as if she were lost in thought. "I don't remember," she murmured. "Not all of it, just pieces." Olivia forced herself to breathe, to stay calm. "Tell me what you do remember, sweetheart. Anything, please." Emily's green eyes flickered up to meet hers, a flicker of something. Was it sadness? Regret? Passing through them. "The water," she whispered. "It was so cold, Mommy. I didn't like it." A shiver ran down Olivia's spine. She swallowed hard. "And then what happened?" Emily's little brows furrowed, her lips pressing together as if she were trying to remember something just out of reach. "I was here, but not here." The words sent a bolt of ice through Olivia's chest. "What does that mean, baby?" Emily shook her head. "I don't know. It's like I was in two places at the same time. But then I woke up and you were here. And the lady told me everything would be okay." Olivia's breath hitched. "The lady from the boat?" Emily nodded. "She told me you would come looking for me." Olivia's grip tightened around her daughter. "And what else did she say?" Emily hesitated for a long moment before whispering, "That you wouldn't want to know the truth." A chill settled deep in Olivia's bones. She pulled Emily closer, her mind racing. There was no logical explanation for this. There was no way to rationalize what was happening. Everything in her life, every memory she held onto, was unraveling before her eyes. And the worst part of her knew. A part of her had always known. She squeezed her eyes shut, pressing a kiss to Emily's forehead. "You're here, baby. I don't care what anyone says. You're real. And I won't let anything happen to you." Emily didn't respond, just curled into her mother's arms like a small, fragile thing. Olivia stayed like that for what felt like hours, clinging to the warmth of her daughter, grounding herself in the rise and fall of Emily's breath. But she knew she couldn't stay locked in this room forever. She needed answers. She needed to know what had happened on this ship. Gently, she pulled away, brushing a stray curl from Emily's forehead. "Baby, I need you to stay here, okay? Just for a little while. I'm going to figure this out." Emily's little hands clutched Olivia's wrist. "Don't go. I have to, sweetheart. But I promise I'll come back. I won't leave you." Emily hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay." Olivia pressed another kiss to her forehead before standing up, forcing herself to move. Every instinct screamed at her to stay, to keep Emily close, but she knew that wouldn't fix anything. She needed to find the truth, and she knew exactly where to start. The captain's quarters. She navigated the twisting hallways of the ship, her heart pounding with every step. The ship felt different now, like something was watching her, like the walls themselves were closing in. Every shadow felt heavier. Every whisper of the ocean outside seemed to hum with something unspoken. By the time she reached the heavily guarded doors leading to the captain's private office, she was shaking. She had no plan, no idea what she was walking into, but she had to try. She stepped forward, clearing her throat. "I need to speak with the captain. It's urgent." The guard at the door barely spared her a glance. "The captain isn't available to passengers, ma'am." Olivia clenched her fists. Please, this is about my daughter. Something is wrong with this ship, and I need to talk to him now. The guard's expression remained impassive. I'm sorry, ma'am. If you have a complaint, you can file it with guest services. Frustration burned in Olivia's chest. She was running out of time. And then, just as she was about to argue, the door behind the guard creaked open. A voice, smooth and controlled, called out, "Let her in." Olivia's breath hitched. The guard stepped aside, and Olivia hesitated only for a second before stepping through the doorway. The captain's office was dimly lit, the scent of polished wood and salt lingering in the air. A large desk sat in the center of the room, and behind it, in a high-backed leather chair, sat Captain William Harland, an older man with sharp blue eyes and an air of quiet authority. He studied her with a careful, unreadable expression. "Ms. Carter," he said, gesturing for her to sit. "You've been looking for answers." Olivia remained standing. "Tell me what's going on," the captain sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I was wondering when you'd come." Her stomach twisted. "What does that mean?" He steepled his fingers together. "Tell me, Ms. Carter, do you remember boarding this ship?" The same question, the same doubt. Olivia opened her mouth, then froze. The memory was fuzzy. She remembered booking the trip. She remembered the fight with Michael. She remembered holding Emily's hand as they arrived at the dock. But boarding? Stepping onto the ship? Her head throbbed. Captain Harland watched her carefully. "This ship doesn't just sail the ocean, Miss Carter. It sails through time, through memory, and sometimes it collects things." Olivia's heart pounded. "What are you saying?" The captain exhaled slowly. "I'm saying you and your daughter weren't supposed to be here. Not like this." The room felt like it was shrinking, the walls closing in. She took a step back. "No, you're lying." The captain's voice remained steady. "You came on this ship looking for a way forward. But this ship," he paused, "it only brings back what's already been lost." Olivia's pulse thundered in her ears. She turned and ran. Through the halls, past the lounges, past the other passengers who seemed too perfect, too still, like they weren't quite real. She burst into her cabin, slamming the door behind her. "Emily!" Silence. The bed was empty. The room was empty. And then, the closet door creaked open. Slowly, Olivia's breath caught, and in the dim light, she saw her. Emily, standing perfectly still. Her head tilted slightly. Her eyes were wrong, distant, faded, like she was slipping away. "Mommy," she whispered. Olivia lunged forward, pulling Emily into her arms, clutching her as if sheer force could keep her here. "You're staying with me," Olivia sobbed. "You're not leaving." Emily's fingers curled into her mother's sleeve. And then, in a voice that was not quite hers, she whispered, "But what if I already did?" The ship groaned. The ocean whispered. And Olivia knew the truth had already taken them. Olivia clutched Emily so tightly she was afraid she might hurt her. But she couldn't let go. She wouldn't. Her daughter's body was warm, small and delicate in her arms. But the way she spoke, "But what if I already did?" sent ice coursing through Olivia's veins. She buried her face in Emily's curls, inhaling deeply, willing herself to stay grounded, to fight whatever nightmare this was. She wasn't losing her daughter. Not again. But the ship seemed to disagree. A deep, resonant groan vibrated through the walls, the floor beneath them shifting ever so slightly, as if the ocean star itself had just exhaled. Olivia's arms tensed around Emily, her heartbeat drumming against her ribs. She pulled back just enough to look into Emily's face, searching for something, anything that would reassure her that this was just her imagination. But Emily's green eyes were distant, unfocused, like she was looking through Olivia rather than at her. "Emily," Olivia whispered, shaking her gently. "Look at me. Baby, please look at me." Emily's gaze flickered slightly, like a glitch in a film reel, her expression momentarily shifting to confusion. "Mommy," a sob caught in Olivia's throat. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm here. I've got you." Emily blinked. "I don't feel right." Olivia swallowed the bile rising in her throat. We're going to fix it, okay? Promise. But we have to go. We can't stay here. Emily hesitated. The lady said it's too late. A sharp chill crawled up Olivia's spine. Her grip tightened. No, it's not too late. We're leaving. Emily's little fingers curled around Olivia's wrist. What if she was right? She's not. Olivia's voice was firm, her determination solidifying into something unshakable. You are real, Emily. You are here with me. Nothing is going to take you away. Emily stared at her for a long moment, and then, for the first time in what felt like forever, her small face softened, her expression normal again. Okay, Mommy. Olivia took a shaky breath. She wasn't sure what had just happened, but she wasn't going to waste time figuring it out. She grabbed their things, stuffing what little they had into a bag, keeping Emily close to her side. They needed to get off this ship. Now, she yanked open the cabin door, stepping into the hallway, her breath quick and uneven. The corridors stretched out before her, endless and twisting, the dim golden lights casting strange, elongated shadows along the walls. Something felt off. The usual background hum of the ship, the distant murmur of voices, the clinking of glasses from the dining halls, the low thrum of music was gone. The air felt thicker, as if the ship itself was holding its breath. Emily gripped Olivia's hand tightly, pressing closer to her side. Mommy, it's too quiet. I know, baby, Olivia whispered, her stomach nodding. We're going to fix it. She moved quickly, heading toward the grand staircase that led to the lower decks. The disembarkation office was on deck 3, where passengers could make arrangements for early departures. If she could just talk to someone real, she could get them out of here. But as they descended the stairs, Olivia's steps slowed. Something was wrong. The hallway that should have led to the main office was gone. Instead, a completely different corridor stretched before them, one she had never seen before. The walls were darker, the lighting dimmer, the air heavier. A thick wave of nausea rolled over Olivia. This wasn't right. Mommy, Emily whispered, pressing closer. I don't like this place. Olivia swallowed, forcing herself to stay calm. It's okay, sweetheart. We took the wrong turn, that's all. But deep down, she knew. This wasn't a wrong turn. The ship had changed. She turned sharply, gripping Emily's hand, ready to backtrack to the staircase. But the staircase was gone. A strangled breath caught in Olivia's throat. No, this wasn't happening. She spun around wildly, searching for something familiar, anything she recognized. But the corridor was different now, stretching into endless darkness. The once luxurious walls now lined with old, faded wallpaper curling at the edges. It looked abandoned. A single, dim light flickered above them, casting erratic shadows that danced along the walls. Emily whimpered, Mommy, we have to go back. Olivia pulled her close, her hands clammy. We will, baby. Just stay with me. She took a step forward, then another. The corridor seemed to stretch endlessly, the air growing colder with each step. The further they walked, the more the ship changed around them. The once polished floors were now scuffed and uneven. The elegant decor had faded, replaced with peeling paint and rusted fixtures. It was like they had stepped into the past. Olivia's breath came in shallow gasps. And then, a soft sound, a giggle, high-pitched, childlike. Emily tensed, her fingers digging into Olivia's palm. Mommy! Olivia turned slowly. At the far end of the hallway, barely visible in the dim light, a little girl stood, dressed in an old-fashioned white nightgown, her dark curls falling over her pale shoulders. She was smiling, but her eyes, they were black. A cold, paralyzing terror gripped Olivia. The little girl took a step forward, then another. Mommy, Emily whimpered. I want to go home. The girl tilted her head. Then she spoke. Why did you leave me? The voice was wrong. It echoed strangely, layered, as if multiple voices were speaking at once. Olivia yanked Emily behind her, stepping backward, her pulse slamming against her ribs. She had to get out. She had to. The lights flickered, and in the instant of darkness, the little girl moved. When the light came back, she was right in front of them. Olivia screamed. Emily sobbed. And then, the hallway shifted again. The walls blurred. The air warped. A deep groaning sound vibrating through the ship as if it was alive. And suddenly, Olivia and Emily were somewhere else. The grand hallway was gone. They were standing in a ballroom, the chandeliers swaying slightly as if disturbed by an unseen force. But the room wasn't empty. People, passengers, stood in small clusters, their elegant clothing strangely outdated. Their faces were blurred, their voices distant, like echoes of a conversation from another time. It was a memory, a ghost of the past. Olivia's chest tightened. "Emily, stay close to me." Emily nodded, clinging to her mother. Then, from across the room, a single figure turned. A woman, tall, graceful, with long dark hair cascading over her shoulders. Her dress was deep blue, the fabric flowing as if caught in an invisible current. She was watching Olivia, and she was smiling, the same knowing, secretive smile that Olivia had seen before. Emily gasped, "Mommy, it's her." The woman raised a hand and beckoned. A cold, paralyzing realization washed over Olivia. This wasn't over. This had never been over. The ship remembered, and it wasn't letting them go. Olivia's entire body locked into place, every muscle frozen as she stared at the woman across the ballroom. The deep blue dress shimmered under the golden chandelier light, flowing around her as though the air itself moved with her presence. Her dark eyes held an eerie kind of warmth, something almost familiar. And yet, Olivia knew with every fiber of her being that this woman was not someone she had ever met before. Or had she? The thought sent a deep chill down her spine. Emily gripped her wrist tightly, her small fingers digging into Olivia's skin. "Mommy, we have to go," she whispered, voice trembling. Olivia's breath was coming too fast, too shallow. "I know, baby," she murmured, trying to force her legs to move. But the moment she did, the woman took a slow step forward. And suddenly, the entire ballroom shifted. The chandeliers flickered, the golden light warping into something colder, dimmer. The voices of the passengers blurred into a soft hum, their movements slowing, like figures trapped in a film reel running at the wrong speed. And then, one by one, they vanished. Olivia sucked in a sharp breath. The once crowded room was now nearly empty. The only figures remaining were Olivia, Emily, and her, the woman in blue. A deep, echoing silence stretched between them. Then, finally, she spoke. "You've come so far, Olivia." The sound of her name in that voice made Olivia flinch. It wasn't just the words themselves, it was how she said it. Like she had known Olivia forever. Like she had been waiting. Emily whimpered, "Mommy, I don't like her." Olivia straightened, pushing Emily slightly behind her. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. The woman tilted her head, her smile deepening. "You already know." A sharp chill ran through Olivia's spine. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "No, I don't. You're just..." The woman took another step forward, her hands clasped in front of her, like she had all the time in the world. "The Ocean Star is special," she said, ignoring Olivia's protests. "It carries more than just passengers. Carries memories, carries souls. It carries the ones who are lost and the ones who cannot leave." Olivia swallowed hard, gripping Emily's hand tighter. "We are not lost," she snapped. "We are not part of this." The woman's smile didn't falter. "Oh, Olivia," she murmured. "You always were a fighter." Something about the way she said it sent a shockwave through Olivia's chest. Like she did know her, like she had known her. A wave of nausea rose in her throat. "What do you want?" The woman's expression softened. "I want to help you see." The room tilted, the air shifted, and suddenly, the ballroom wasn't a ballroom anymore. Olivia gasped as the walls melted, as the chandeliers flickered out, as the grand space around them twisted into something else, something darker. She was standing on a dock she recognized. The air was cold, salty, the waves crashing violently against the wooden planks. A thick fog rolled over the water, and through it, Olivia could see the ocean star looming in the distance, its grand silhouette half hidden in the mist. And then she saw herself, standing there, holding Emily's tiny hand. The breath left Olivia's body. She was watching her own memory, her past self, her hair whipping in the ocean breeze, her eyes tired but hopeful, gripping onto Emily like a lifeline, was boarding the ship. But something was wrong. There was no one else on the dock. No other passengers. No crew members. No signs of life at all. Just her and Emily. Olivia shook her head violently. "No," she whispered, stepping forward, trying to reach for the memory of herself. "No, I remember this. We boarded. There were people. There were." The woman in blue appeared beside her, her voice gentle. "Are you sure?" Olivia's breathing grew ragged. She tried to remember the crowds, the check-in, the buzz of conversation. She tried to remember the moment she and Emily had stepped onto the ship, but there was nothing. Only static. Only this. The truth settled over her like ice. They had been alone. They had always been alone. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. The memory shifted again, the dock fading, and suddenly Olivia was back on the ship. But this time, it wasn't the luxurious cruise liner she had known. It was old, rusted, decayed. The walls were lined with peeling paint, the floors warped with time and water damage. The entire ship groaned, like it was breathing. A flickering lantern cast shadows along the wall, and at the far end of the hallway, a passenger manifest hung on the wall. Olivia's breath hitched. She knew what she was going to see before she even reached it. Slowly, she stepped forward. Emily's little footsteps followed behind her. The paper was yellowed, the ink faded, but the names were still legible. She scanned the list, her heart hammering so loudly she thought it might burst. And then, there they were. Olivia Carter, Emily Carter, passengers aboard the Ocean Star. Departure, April 4th, 2002. Status, lost at sea. Olivia stumbled back, her hand flying to her mouth. "No," she choked out. Emily looked up at her, her small fingers gripping Olivia's sleeve. "Mommy!" Olivia turned to the woman, her vision swimming. "What does this mean?" she whispered. The woman's gaze softened. "It means, Olivia, you never made it." The words hit her like a tidal wave. "No," Olivia gasped, shaking her head. "That's not true. I'm here. Emily is here. The woman reached out, touching Olivia's arm lightly. And suddenly Olivia remembered. She remembered the storm. She remembered the waves swallowing them whole. She remembered sinking, sinking, sinking. The air left her lungs, her body weightless, the cold swallowing her like an embrace. She had been here before. She had been here for 23 years. And so had Emily. A sob tore from Olivia's throat. She fell to her knees, clutching Emily to her chest, rocking her, holding on to what little she had left. Emily's voice was small. "Mommy, what happens now?" Olivia looked up at the woman, tears spilling down her cheeks. And the woman whispered, "You decide." The ship groaned, the past pressing in, waiting. And Olivia knew. This was the moment that changed everything. The moment she chose whether they stayed, or finally moved on. The weight of the truth pressed down on Olivia like the ocean itself, heavy and suffocating. She clutched Emily close, her heartbeat frantic against her ribs, her mind unable to grasp the reality unraveling before her. They had never left this ship. They had never survived the storm. They had been here for 23 years. The thought was too massive, too devastating, too impossible to accept. Emily's small fingers gripped Olivia's arm, her green eyes wide with confusion and something else, fear. "Mommy?" she whispered. "I don't want to stay here." The ship groaned around them, the walls pulsing as if the ocean star itself was listening, waiting for Olivia to decide. The ballroom flickered between two versions of itself, the grand, glittering space filled with chandeliers and laughter, and the decayed, abandoned husk of a ship long lost to time. The woman in blue stood before her, watching with those unreadable eyes. "You've been here before, Olivia," she said gently. "Many times, but you always choose the same path." Olivia swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" The woman tilted her head slightly. "Every time you remember, every time you reach this moment, you refuse to let go." A sharp, icy breath left Olivia's lips. "Because I can't. Because she's my daughter." Emily pressed her face against Olivia's shoulder, her small body trembling. "Mommy, I want to go home." Olivia's chest ached at the sound of her voice. "I know, baby. I know." She turned back to the woman. "You said I decide. So tell me. Tell me how I get us out of here." The woman sighed, stepping closer. "You don't belong here anymore, Olivia. Neither of you do. But the ship doesn't let go so easily. It remembers you. It wants you to stay." A cold dread settled in Olivia's stomach. "And if I refuse?" The woman's dark eyes flickered with something like sorrow. "Then you will stay. Forever." The word forever rang in Olivia's skull like a bell, reverberating through every inch of her. She shook her head violently. "No. No, I won't accept that." She wouldn't. She had fought too hard, held on for too long to let go now. But then, a voice. Soft. Familiar. "Olivia." Her entire body went rigid. Slowly, she turned. And there, standing at the edge of the ballroom, was Michael. Her breath caught. He looked older, but not by much. His hair was a little thinner, his face lined with worry, but his eyes, those deep brown eyes she had once known better than anything, were filled with something she hadn't seen in years. Raw, unfiltered grief. "Michael," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking. His face twisted with something indescribable. "Oh my God," he breathed, stepping forward. "Olivia. Emily." His voice broke on their daughter's name. Emily stiffened in Olivia's arms. "Daddy." Michael let out a sound, half sob, half laugh, as he fell to his knees, staring at them like he couldn't believe they were real. "You can see us?" Olivia whispered. Michael's eyes were wet. I've been searching for you," he said, his voice hoarse. "For years. I never stopped. Olivia, I never stopped." Olivia's heart felt like it was splitting in two. "But how? How are you here?" Michael shook his head, his hands trembling. "I don't know. I came back. I booked this cruise again. I thought maybe if I came back here, if I followed the same path, I could find you. And now," his voice cracked. "Oh my God. Olivia, tell me this is real. Tell me I'm not losing my mind." Olivia let out a choked sob. He came back for them. After all these years, after everything, Michael had never given up. The ship let out a deep, groaning sigh, the walls shuddering around them. The air felt thicker, the ocean's pull growing stronger. The woman in blue took a step closer, her voice urgent now. "Olivia, listen to me. This is your moment. This is your chance. But you must choose now." The ship lurched, the ballroom distorting, the walls bending and warping like the ship itself was deciding whether to keep them or let them go. Michael reached for Olivia, his hands shaking. "Come back to me," he begged. "Please, come back to me, Liv." Tears streamed down Olivia's face. She looked down at Emily, at her beautiful, innocent face, at the child she had fought so hard to protect. And for the first time, she let herself see the truth. Emily was fading. A soft glow radiated around her, her edges blurring, like she was slipping through Olivia's fingers. "Mommy," Emily whispered, her voice impossibly soft. "I don't think I can go with you." Olivia's breath stopped. A horrible, gut-wrenching realization crashed into her. Emily hadn't survived the storm. She never had. It had always been Olivia who wasn't ready to let go. Her body shook with silent sobs, her hands clutching Emily's tiny shoulders. "No, baby, don't say that. You are coming with me. We're going home." Emily's little hands touched Olivia's face, brushing away her tears. "I love you, Mommy," she whispered. "But I think I have to stay." Olivia broke. The ship shuddered, the walls groaning, the ocean roaring in her ears. Michael's voice was frantic now. "Olivia, we have to go." But Olivia couldn't move. She was losing her daughter all over again. Emily smiled softly, her tiny fingers wrapping around Olivia's wrist one last time. "You'll always be my mommy." The ship lurched violently, and then a blinding, searing light erupted around them. Everything vanished. The ballroom, the ship, the endless corridors. Gone. Olivia woke to the sound of crashing waves. Her body was sprawled across a sandy shore, the salty breeze tangling in her hair. Sunlight burned against her eyelids. Slowly, she sat up, disoriented, her head pounding. She turned and saw Michael beside her, soaking wet, coughing, his eyes wild as he reached for her. "Liv?" he choked out, his hands grabbing her shoulders. "Oh my God, Liv, you're here. You're real." Olivia's breath came in ragged gasps. She turned, frantically searching, but Emily wasn't there. A deep, aching hole tore through Olivia's chest. She staggered to her feet, her vision blurring, her voice cracking as she screamed, "Emily!" Only the ocean answered. And then, through the waves, a figure, a little girl, standing in the shallow water, her green eyes soft, her dark curls swaying in the breeze. She lifted a tiny hand and waved. Tears blurred Olivia's vision. Emily smiled, and then she faded, like she had never been there at all. A sob racked through Olivia's body as she fell into Michael's arms, her entire world breaking and healing in the same breath. Emily was gone, but she was free. And finally, so was Olivia.